Hey guys, it's Mark Holthe here, coming to you live once again on the Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page. I'm broadcasting from the amazing Petra, Jordan, which is where I will be going here in just about, well, it's the 25th today, about a month. I'm super excited about it. Welcome to the Express Entry Live Q&A. As always, I'm Canadian immigration lawyer, an ex-immigration officer, and a former high school teacher. And we'll just wait a little bit as people join in. I have been waiting for you guys to share with me your pictures of amazing, beautiful locations all over the world. But apparently I've got to come up with these things. So if you have a beautiful location that you would like me to do my next EE Live Q&A from, even if it's your house, I don't care. Show me a picture of your house and and I'll broadcast from your location if it's all over the world. So we'll give some time for people to tune in. I want to give a special shout out to my newest employee, Igor, who is now officially a part of the Holthe Immigration Law team. And Igor is watching from his location in Calgary, our newest office in Calgary. And so we've got Edmonton and Calgary and Lethbridge. We've got Alberta covered now, which is awesome. And this is only the beginning, folks, only the beginning. All right, so those of you who are tuning in, my apologies for being a little bit late getting started. I was wrapping up a big, long discussion with my web developer, and that's Parrot. Those guys are fantastic. And what I'm going to do is here in a little bit, I'm going to show you, you guys are going to get a sneak peek to the site that is just about ready to be launched. And so a big shout out to Parrot Solutions, who have been so kind, so generous in sharing their knowledge, their expertise, and helping me to get my site launched, and in a way that's really different. And we're just scratching the surface. There's a whole bunch of things that we're going to be doing that's just totally awesome. But with that being said, let's jump back once again. And I want all of you guys who are tuning in to post in the comments below where you're listening from, because I absolutely love to see where everybody's listening from and just who's paying attention to this crazy little broadcast that we do. Okay, so we have Ralph. As always, good to see you, Ralph, with little Jatin on your shoulders there. I can see in your image. You're so cool. How is Jatin doing? How are you guys doing? I sure miss you guys. Ralph is a former client, and he lives up in Edmonton, and he's one of my faithful followers here at noon. Remember, every Tuesday at noon, we do this, and sometimes it's a little bit later. Like today, we got started a little bit later. But slowly we're going to figure this out. And I say we because no longer is it me. I'm grateful to have Igor. And once again, Igor, if you're watching, just post a comment and give a shout out to everybody so they can see who I'm referring to. Priya is from India. Welcome. Fazia says, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Fazia from India. Francis is in Malta. Mir's in Pakistan. And then we've got Jatin, who's already posting questions. Hold off on your questions, Jatin, and I will address them. Remember, express entry is kind of the focus. Okay, Francis is also from Malta. All right, there we go. He said Malta and watching from Malta. Okay, I guess I said Francis twice. Very cool. And Ralph says Jatin is sick. No. Oh, the poor little guy. I'm actually a little congested myself today. I was working, as always. I spent too many hours plowing away here, and Igor is logged in as the Canadian Immigration Institute. So he says, hi all, great to be here with you all. Awesome. So he is going to be navigating and managing things from that standpoint as we go through here, and I'm really grateful to have him as a part of the team. Okay, what is coming up? Zara's from Algeria. Fozzie says, welcome, Igor. Okay, enough of the play-by-play. You guys can see this. Those of you who are tuning in as a recording on YouTube, you can also go to, well, if you want to watch it live, it's right on the Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page, noon Mountain Standard Time, every Tuesday. But for those of you who are watching this as a recording, which is thousands of you, I am so very, very grateful that you take the time to tune in. I know that noon Mountain Standard Time is not the greatest time for a lot of people. In fact, many people are stuck with the reality of choosing to stay up really late if you're in Asia, India in particular, 12:30 or even later, Pakistan, a.m. to watch this live. So the fact that you guys are tuning in and watching it really, really makes a difference for me, and it means a lot to me. All right, Ify is in UK. Vikas is in Poland. Hello, Vikas. Good to have you join us. Kaba is Liberia. And we've got Ridwan, who's Dhaka, Bangladesh. So we've got a great group. Harry is tuning in from India. Welcome, Harry. We got a great group of people today. All right, so as you can see from the title, one of the things I want to demystify at the beginning here, and we'll get to this in a little bit, is the reality that some people are really, really confused about claiming work experience in an occupation where maybe you have not yet completed your studies. And that's one of the questions that we're going to get to. So stay tuned for that one. And that's kind of the pillar question, the highlighted question of this particular EE Live Q&A. So as we're waiting for people to jump on, I want to give you a little bit of an overview again about the rules of engagement. So there are individuals who have sent an email to info@holthylaw.com right here, and they've put EE Live Q&A in the subject line. I have then taken those emails. I shouldn't say I have, Mauricia has, and I'm not sure if Mauricia is watching this live. I think she's working right now. But those who send an email will go to Mauricia, and she will screen them out, and she will determine the questions that are going to make it through. So you have to pass her test. And the test is it a good question that if Mark answered it, that it would benefit the thousands of people that are actually watching? That's the test. If you send an email and it's full of a whole bunch of specific things, then you're in a situation where you are stuck with getting, I shouldn't say stuck, you will get a request to book a paid consultation. So keep that in mind as you're going forward. We're going to start off always with answering the questions that were sent in by the listeners via email. And then the last of the EE Live Q&A will be an open forum where I answer all the questions that you're throwing at me. So let's get started today. And we've got a great group of people that are tuned in. The first question, and once we transition, I'll show you my website in a little bit, but we won't worry about that right now. So the first question, I'm going to pull this up. And this question is from Mamadul. And he says, "Hi, Mark. I hope this email finds you well. I'm from Bangladesh. I have a query on personal history. In between my two jobs, I have only 2 days when I was actually unemployed. I resigned on December 21st from the previous job, and I joined a new job in the same month on December 24th. Since in the personal history, we have to record activities by month and year only and not by day, is it okay not to mention unemployed for these 2 days in the personal history?" So the short answer is yes, that is totally fine. There is no issues whatsoever. And effectively, Mamadul, what you would have to do is you'd have to create a separate entry for unemployed for those 2 days that starts in December of 2000, whatever it was, 15, we'll say, and ends in December of 2015. And so there's really nothing to be gained by that. Transitioning with a couple days, heck, it could be the weekend, right? You could be finished on a Friday and start on Monday. You do not have to break that down into a separate piece. Now, if you had maybe 3 weeks of unemployment or 4 weeks, then in those circumstances, sometimes I will actually put that unemployment in. But when we're just talking about a weekend, 2 days, no, I think the immigration officers would also think it's over the top to do that. Okay, very, very good. All right, so now we'll move forward here. This question is from Norel, and Norel says, "Hi, Mark. I've heard mixed things about work experience." Ha ha ha! This is the one, guys. This is the pillar question. So if you want to just log in at, actually, Igor, if you want to make a note of this at 9:08 or something, or 9:10, that's where I'm answering the pillar question. So people, when we ultimately post this on YouTube and as a recording, that's where the flagship question that I'm going to answer is going to happen. So, all right, I'll let you deal with that, Igor, as far as timing. All right, so here's the question. I've heard mixed things about work experience done before graduating. And actually, now that I think about it, can you guys just give me a thumbs up, and maybe Igor, you can too. How are the audio levels? It just kind of dawned on me that the last time I did this, the audio levels were a little bit quiet and people couldn't hear me. And so I want you to let me know how the audio levels are. I turned up my mic a little bit, And it's really important that everybody can hear me. So give me a thumbs up, give me some thumbs if that works, or just give me a verbal confirmation in the chat. Okay, moving forward here. So Norel, she says, I've heard mixed things about work experience done before graduating, such as student jobs or internships. I believe for CEC applicants, that work experience is strictly not counted. However, for federal skilled worker, there seems to be more of a gray area, as I've heard of people successfully getting their PR with it. My question is, can work experience before graduating still count in some situations? Thank you for your time and effort. So what I think is being asked here by Norel is questions about whether or not you can claim work experience before you've actually graduated. Now there's two parts to this, okay? One of the questions relates to if you are studying in Canada on a study permit and you're doing off-campus work in those, part-time 15 hours a week that you're allowed to work, and also in the transitions where you're working full-time in your regular breaks. Can you count that Canadian work experience within your application? So that's the question, right? Can you do it? And what it comes down to, and this is one of the more complicated areas of express entry, is for the purposes of the comprehensive ranking system score, you can't count any work experience in Canada where you're on a study permit or where you're studying. It's only when you transition to your postgrad work permit. And in fact, IRCC, although it's not out there anywhere, will actually allow you to start counting your work experience from the date you submit your postgrad work permit. So under the Canadian experience class, yes, and under the comprehensive ranking system, you get points for Canadian work experience only under certain requirements. And if you're on a study permit, you can't count that work experience. Under the Federal Skilled Worker Program, this is where the confusion is. So yes, some people have been able to claim their work experience generally under the Federal Skilled Worker Program, but I'll tell you, my perspective is that there's a lot of discretion up to officers, and if you're relying on it, you're taking a very, very significant chance. So if individuals are in Canada, they've got a study permit, they're trying to count that work experience as continuous work experience part-time, for instance, you're going to have a real uphill battle with immigration getting that approved. Some people do get that work experience approved because not all officers are created equally. And some let work experience go through when individuals are not eligible because they just don't catch it. They're not perfect. So then those people who've had success then tell everybody else, yes, you can do it. But if you look at the requirements for the programs under the comprehensive ranking system, when you're getting your scores, that Canadian work experience can only be counted if you are on a work permit or otherwise authorized to claim it. Okay. And that's basically kind of the overview. A second part to this question is for people who are outside of Canada. If you're outside of Canada, you can claim any work experience. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's skilled, it's full-time, or an equivalent in part-time. If you're using it to meet the minimum entry criteria of the Federal Skilled Worker Program, it needs to be continuous. But once you've hit that 1 year of continuous full-time work experience, then you can pull work experiences from other jobs and other NOCs that are also in sections that are paid full-time skilled work. You can use those together to be added to your comprehensive ranking system score to accumulate the full 3 years. And really, for most of you who are qualifying for ITAs these days, you pretty much have got enough human capital with everything else that 3 years of foreign work experience is usually enough. Now, if you're older and you're in Canada and you're relying on Canadian work experience and study and those kinds of things, then yeah, maybe you need to watch a little bit more carefully. But even in those circumstances, if you're in Canada, you're not even going to be going through the Federal Skilled Worker Program. It will be the Canadian Experience class. So even that whole continuous nature doesn't apply. So two parts to that question. One, can you claim work experience in Canada while, I think what Norel is asking, while you're on a study permit, can you count it? And the question is not settled. And that's the only way I can describe it. Some people have had luck counting it under the Federal Skilled Worker Program as work experience, but it's not foreign work experience. It's in Canada. And the regulations define what Canadian work experience is. And they specifically exclude the ability for you to count, they exclude the ability to count work experience that was acquired while you're on a study permit. So some people have gotten through, but I don't take chances with it. I don't. All right, there we go. Next question. And that was a long one. Woo! Oh, well, sometimes it happens that way. Okay, better have a little drink here. I remember to bring some drink for me. I'm battling a little bit of a cold. So I just see Abdi here's, first of all, great picture of Petra. It is in my country, Jordan. Woo! Awesome. Very cool. Okay. Okay, so moving forward here. Vika says that doesn't matter whether the experience is during study, question mark. Okay, well, that's what I'm talking about here. Just to clarify, if you have work experience while you're studying, generally speaking, it's not going to be accepted. Some people have had success through the federal program. I've never got a clear answer from Express Entry from the officers. And maybe other people have had success, but I do not take chances. If you're on a study permit, you're not going to be able to claim comprehensive ranking system points because Canadian experience is defined as a certain thing within the regulations. If you are on a work permit, then obviously all that washes away. If you are outside of Canada, then it doesn't matter as long as the work experience is paid. Could be internship, could be, before you even complete your degree. Even if the NOC employment requirements stipulate that you need a degree to do it, if it's foreign work experience, that doesn't form a part of the assessment. All they look at is whether or not you've performed all of the activities in the lead statement and a substantial number of the main duties in the duties section set out in that National Occupational Classification 2016, the profile section. All right. Okay, so moving on here, those who have a question. Vikas says, but I'm not in Canada, I'm on a study permit in Poland. Irrelevant, Vikas, doesn't matter. As long as you're paid, you can, and it's skilled full-time or part-time equivalent, continuous, all that stuff, you're good. Okay, so now moving to the next question. Those of you who have comments that are related to specific questions, hold off, and I will get to those as soon as we finish doing these ones here in that were sent in by mail, and we're just about through them. Okay, this one's Mohammed. He says, hello, Mark. I have a query regarding ECAs. As we are a family of 2, and we both received an ECA from Wes, and they're both 2 or more credentials, I want to know about, while filing the EAPR, is it possible that they consider as master's points because we have a master's degree, then postgrad diploma for 1 year, but Wes considers it 2 or more? Or it will only consider what actually ECA agency assesses? Great question, Mohammed. They will only consider whatever Wes says it is. So if you have a master's, but they only equate it to something else lower, that's all you're going to get credit for. All right. Okay, next question. Himanshu says, hi, Mark. I hope you're doing well. This is Himanshu from India once again. Thanks for your reply to my previous mail in the live Q&A session in the first week of February. All right, Himanshu is back for more. My question is, if an international student can join 3 or 4 month crash course of French language to enhance his or her CRS score while working on a valid postgrad work permit, as the postgrad work permit comes with one condition that I quote, unless authorized, prohibited from attending any educational institution or taking any academic, professional, or vocational training course. Considering this condition, what do you suggest? This is actually really good. I think what I need to do is share my screen so that you guys can see the question. I think it would be easier actually to follow along. But anyways, so basically what Himanshu was asking is they're now on their postgrad work permit in Canada and they want to take another course in this case, in French to try to get more points. Well, understand study permits are only required for courses of 6 months or longer. So if the language crash course you're taking in French is only 3 or 4 months, that's not a problem. It doesn't require a study permit to do it, and it does not affect the conditions that are imposed on your postgrad work permit. So you're fine with that. Anything under 6 months, you're fine. You don't need a study permit. Great question. All right. Next one here is Ali. Okay, this one's a little bit longer, Ali. We'll see. I'm going to have to tell Mauricia, and I'm not sure if Mauricia is tuned in. I see Igor posted a comment here. Maybe it was Mauricia who posted the comment. I'm not sure. Igor says, sounds great here. And so 2 of my awesome people, members of our team. Okay, so Ali says, and I'll just point this out to Mauricia if she's watching, make sure that the questions are a little bit more condensed. I'll spend half the time reading their question. Okay, let's see how this one is. I hope you're doing good. I want to clarify, okay, this concern of mine, which relates to the ECA report and the issue date and updating the EE profile before the ITA which will benefit a lot of people out there. Okay, Ali, if you think this is going to benefit a lot of people, let's see. It wouldn't have got through this far if it wasn't for Maricia. So let's see. So my WES report was completed December 16th, 2019. When I submitted my EE profile at CRS 469, due to some reason, I did receive a WES hard copy. So I contacted them around mid-Jan to repost it. WES has posted the report, but to my surprise, they have updated the issue date as February the 4th, which is mentioned on the letter. Same is the case with the WES online account, where now I can see only access and download the soft copy. It's dated February the 4th as well. In those days, when I sent this request to WES, I somehow managed to receive my original hard copy dated December 16th. What a mess. Okay, so you've got different dates and everything. Okay. The same reference number, but with different issue dates. And both instances, WES has shared the reports electronically to IRCC. What a mess. So basically, Ali's saying he's got multiple reports from WES, different dates. Hard copies are conflicting with electronic copies. The reference number is all the same, but the dates are just off. So the question is, can I update my EE profile with the February 4th report? I'm worried because in this instance, my date of EE submission will remain December 16th, but my ECA report will reflect February the 4th. And that might be problematic. Or should I delete this profile and submit a new one where the profile submission date and ECA report date will be consistent? Ali, you definitely do not want to mess with this. You haven't indicated, let's see, I'm trying to think. It doesn't look like you've got your ITA yet. You're obviously going to update. If you haven't received your ITA, you can update with whatever you want. In these situations, your report is based on the actual number associated with it, that serial number. And so that's what the government is going to be looking at, is that number. You're making a lot of confusion about this where you probably don't even need to. If you have a concern, then just explain it in your letter of explanation when you get your ITA. So I wouldn't worry too much about the conflicting dates. This is Wes's problem, not yours. And you just explain it. And this is an example where an officer will understand. And if there's any confusion, they will refer to your letter of explanation, and then that will help to clarify it. Okay, great. We got two more questions here. This one is Beck, and he says, hope you're doing fantastic. I'm one of the regular followers of your work, be it Facebook, YouTube, or even LinkedIn. Awesome, Beck. You've addressed lots of queries related to express entry, but I have a confusion of which you have not discussed in any of your videos. I've got a little bit of a cold, so I need to get a little more fluid in me. Okay. So he says, I'm planning to include tax returns as a supplementary document to prove my work experience. Tax returns can be generated in English, but work period and tax deposit date mentioned in the tax return is not in the AD calendar format. Instead, it's the BS calendar format used by the government in Nepal. Instead, okay, he has 2020, February 25th. It states October 2nd, 2076. Reference letter from my employer shows the work period in both AD and BS. So do I have to provide a translation of the BS to AD for tax returns? I'm afraid if a visa officer refuses the application on the grounds that the date format in the tax returns is not in the form understandable by him, what will be the best approach in this scenario? Wow, Beck, this is one that's so specific, my friend. This whole issue, when you have these types of things, I wouldn't get too hung up over it. Once again, I would explain. In your letter of explanation is your ability to explain to the officer why there is these different dates. And, if that's the customary practice in Nepal, then it's not going to be that unusual. An officer will probably have experienced it in the past. But a simple letter of explanation should help to clarify that. In terms of the translation, well, anything that's not in English needs to be translated. But in terms of converting a BS calendar to an AD calendar, I wouldn't get hung up over that. I would just explain it in your letter of explanation. All right. Okay, here is the question from Will St. Louis. And Will had given a very, very big email to me, but we've pulled out just a few questions. So, all right. So I appreciate you taking your valuable time to help us with EE. What is the minimum CRS score needed to fill express entry? Okay, I think it's probably makes sense. Okay, let's continue the question. My friend had a CRS score of 235. Can he apply? Which is the most important, CRS score or a minimum of 67 points? Please help us understand the difference in these two. Okay, so this actually could be a flagship question in, basically in any EE Live Q&A, and it all comes down to how Express Entry works. So let's go here, and I'm going to show you. We're going to go. Okay, we're going to go, and I'm going to share my screen with you. Hopefully this works. Yay, it does. Okay, and now I'm going to make this a little bit larger. We're going to go straight to the federal skilled worker. I think you guys can see it now. We're going to go here. This is the starting point for everybody who's outside of Canada who does not have Canadian experience. So how it works is you first have to meet the eligibility requirements for the federal skilled worker program in order to be eligible to submit a profile into the pool. So you must meet these requirements. If you meet them, then you're eligible to submit your application into the pool. When you submit it into the Express Entry pool, then at that stage, you're given a comprehensive ranking system score that will determine whether or not you rank high enough as they compare you to the other people in the pool at that time to get an ITA, an invitation to apply. So let's take a look at this quickly, because in the question that was asked, there was reference made to the 67 points. So if you look at this, how the program works, it's very similar to the comprehensive ranking system. They assess your human capital. So the selection factors are also age. You can see how they're overlapping: age, education, work experience, a job offer in Canada, language ability, and adaptability, which is kind of like skilled transferability in the comprehensive ranking system. But it's all down to the selection grid. And this selection grid is out of 100 points. So when they tabulate the scores given for each of these factors, those scores have to be at least 67 points. If you're below 67 points, then you can't even submit your application, your profile into the pool. You're not eligible. So if you meet the 67 points, those points are calculated on a different point structure, a different grid than the comprehensive ranking system. So if we go to the selection factors, you'll see here that there are a maximum of 28 points out of 100 for language skills. And then the language points are awarded on a different scale, but they still follow the Canadian language benchmark. So essentially, if you have at least a CLB 9, which is really the only thing that you're going to be able to qualify for under the federal skilled worker program, if you're outside of Canada, without at least a CLB 9 in every category, it's not going to work. And that's basically 7 in speaking, 8 in listening on the actual IELTS test, 7 in speaking, 8 in listening, and 7 in reading and writing. That will give you a CLB 9 right here. And then you will get this many points, 6, 6, 6, 6, which is basically 24 points, which is the maximum points. So you can see that's how it's calculated. And so there's points for education, 25 points, which are also on a different score, a different categorization. Work experience is a maximum of 15 points. And you can see, so you tally all of these points up. Even age has its own factors. So when you add up those points, if you're able to meet the 67, let's go up a little bit higher right here. If you're able to meet the 67 point or higher score, then you're eligible to submit your application into the pool. Once you're in the pool, and understand, this is where lovely consultants and overseas agents try to take your money, because they say, oh, look, you meet the 67 points. You're eligible for Express Entry. Well, for all intents and purposes, you might be eligible, but actually getting an invitation to apply determines on how high your comprehensive ranking system is. And your point total is also, you can see, based on a point structure. And so age has a maximum of 100 points if you're married or have a common law partner, 110 if you're single. Education, 150 maximum. Languages, 160 maximum. Canadian work experience is 80. And then there's, if you have a spouse, 40 of your points are attributed to the spouse. That's why the spouse has 40 here. And that's why when you tabulate it for a married person right here, the maximum total points for a married person is actually less the 40 points to reach the total 500. So if it's, you can see here, the human capital plus spouse equals a maximum of 500 points. Or without a spouse, it's 500 points. So here you're going to have 460. And here, the extra 40 points are given to your spouse, or you have all of the full 500 are here on this side if you do not have a spouse right here. Okay. And then as we go down, the skill transferability gives you the extra 500, the extra 100 points. That's why it's so important to have really good official language proficiency, because that will give you an extra 50 points here. And the same thing right here, coupled with your work experience, will get the other 50 points. And then we go through, there's additional points for siblings, for French, for post-secondary education, for arranged employment, for provincial nomination. And that's how all of the points are calculated. And then there's the detailed breakdown here. So understand, just because you're eligible to submit your profile into the express entry pool because you meet the federal skilled worker program eligibility does not mean that you're going to get an invitation to apply. So in the case of our friend here, who said his friend only has 235 points, well, let's flip back one more time and I'll show you one other thing here. And I think all of you who have been watching this for a while, if you go to the rounds of invitations, you can see where they're at. So we open up the rounds of invitations and we can look and see what the most recent draw was, February the 19th. There was a big draw, so it dropped down to 470. And it's pretty sad when I say it drops down to 470, but that's kind of where we're at. So at 470, you can see here, this individual who's at 230 doesn't have a prayer. This is basically a little bit of a range or a snapshot. It's not terribly helpful anymore because we don't really know the breakdown of this 451 to 600. This is something I wish that the government would shift this. At a time when draws were happening in between the 400 to 450 range, it made sense to put these as separate little breakdowns based on 10 numerical increments. But really, this is where we should have the breakdown now between 451 and 600, because we don't know really where all these 21,000 people are allocated. We do know, obviously, that with the rounds of invitations, if we go backwards, we click on the previous rounds, we can see that before that it was 472, 471, 473. You can see consistently above. Then it dropped to 469 right here. But 472, 471, it's consistently been above 470. 475, and then this is a program specific draw so there was only just a few that were invited because it was under the federal skilled trade program right here. They usually do 2 of those a year. And so you can see here, when it comes to the rounds of invitations, just because you're eligible doesn't mean you have a chance of qualifying. So make sure you do both assessments and don't trust someone who says, oh, I'll just take your money and submit your profile for you. The only thing I'll qualify is if you are not quite at the level where you're going to get an invitation to apply, all is not lost. You can actually take and still submit your profile, because some provinces extend notifications of interest based on your comprehensive ranking system score. Like, for example, the Ontario Human Capital Priority Stream will sometimes issue extensions for nominations to people who are just under the period where people are getting drawn, like the high 460s, for instance. But they only have so many spots, so it's quite narrow, the actual draw. Then there's other provinces like Alberta that have passive notifications of interest, where it's really based on your work experience. And they're not so concerned about how high your ranking is on the comprehensive ranking system, but they're actually more concerned about whether your occupation that you have experience in is in demand or in shortage in the province. So that's how come some people will get notifications of interest in the express entry system, even when their scores are maybe in some cases under 400, in the low 300s even. All right. Okay, so there we go, guys. there's a big breakdown. We covered some really meaty topics, but now it is time to answer questions for all of you faithful listeners who've been watching live right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up. Shawshank says, do you have a contact number? Igor, can you just put in our contact, how he can reach out to us? It's the 403-328-1441 number. That's the best contact number to reach us. Okay. Bernard says, hey, Mark, Actually, do you know what? I'm going to show you guys something before we transition. So Bernard is going to be the first one. If you have a question that you want to post, you can post it now. And then I'll start with Bernard's question and we'll answer that one first. So you can post those and then I'll go in the order in which I see them until we get to just a little after 1 and then we'll wrap it up. But I want to give you guys a sneak peek, just a sneak peek because it's not live yet, into my new Healthy Immigration Law website. And I've had a couple advisors tell me, Mark, no one can find you. And obviously the fact Shawshank is looking for a contact number, he said, nobody can find you online. Like no one can get in contact with you. Obviously I try to post how to connect through the website, but I've made a conscious effort to try to make it as easy as possible. And now that I have a website that's just about ready to be launched, I just want to give you guys a sneak peek. And it's kind of goofy because they said, Mark, you need to have your picture there so that people know who you are and can recognize this is your site. So I followed suit and that's what I did. So I'll flip over here and this is what it is. So this is kind of the start, immigration representation done better. And you can see my ugly mug is in the background there. And then what makes us so special, who we love to work with, need just a little support, which is a shout out to those awesome DIY guides. And so this is kind of the starting point. What I'm just in the process of finalizing is the Start Here button, which will take you all through the various questions to make sure that you're directed to exactly the kind of service that you need and where you can find me and to make it easy. And so I'm really, really excited about it. In here, I talk a lot more about my new motto, and it's the firm's mission, which is client-centered, firm-supported, which basically means everything we do is to help empower you in your effort to submit your own application. And it's supported because we walk you through step by step in an unbelievably collaborative way to make sure your application is as correct and accurate as it possibly can be before you submit it. And so you can, once this goes live, I'll post it, but this is just a little sneak peek, why people hire us, all these kinds of things. And so that's kind of a little bit of, just a little bit of an idea of what is to come. And it's mobile friendly, which is always good. So I wanted to share that with you guys. All right, let's jump over now and answer some more questions. Okay, so Bernard says, and I'm going to pull these in where I can see them closer. Okay, so Bernard says, hey, Mark, should the passport be valid for at least 6 months also at the port of entry, or only from the day we submit the APR as written on the Canadian website? When you submit your passport to get the visa put in it, if that's the case, it needs to be valid for 6 months at that stage. If the visa has been put in your passport and your passport is valid for one more day, maybe it expires tomorrow, technically you can still come, you can still go through the port of entry and land and become a permanent resident and come to Canada. You can, with only 1 day left on it, but you need the 6 months when you're actually getting the visa put in it, because they won't give it to you unless your passport is valid for at least 6 months. They'll make you go back. At least generally speaking, that's the case. Okay, Afolabi says, can I apply for permanent residence from outside Canada without depending on my Canadian wife? Sure you can. You just have to go through express entry if you meet the requirements. So like obviously your spouse in Canada is able to sponsor you through the family class, but going through express entry, everything that we've talked about here, Afolabi, the key here is that you have to assess your human capital, just like I showed you here. And I want to give a shout out to, I'll just continue on. But yes, the short answer is yes. And if you want, Afo, you can actually book a consult and we can go through your eligibility and all the processes. Okay, Vika says, do common law partner have to provide some kind of document to prove the relationship? Vicus, yeah, in some cases, they do come back and request you to provide proof that you guys have actually been living together for at least a year in a spousal relationship. And some of the legal terms that they use is something called a, excuse me, whoo, that was a big sneeze. I might have another one coming, hopefully not. Anyways, Sorry. So when it comes to proving it, they can always come back and ask you to prove it. So 1 year living together in a spousal relationship, and you have a centralized mode of existence. In other words, your lives are intertwined, just like a married couple would be. All right. Okay. Abdi says, I finished my master's from Canada. I have a study permit and doing my PhD now. Awesome. 8 years of work experience in software engineering. CRS is 453. Do I have any chance of being picked up by the OINP? It's hard to say. It really is. As the scores have gone higher with the general ITA draws, all it means is that there are many more people that are competing now at a higher level for those limited spots with the OINP. 453, it's hard to say, but it's probably too low. It's yeah. What do I say? It's just it's difficult to be able to predict, but I think it'd be pretty tough. Okay, Anshu says, I'm filling an OINP application, and my wife will be accompanying me. Non-accompanying spouse will only add more points to my CRS, and my wife will maybe not be accompanying me. We are getting a new passport for her, which might take a month, and her old passport got canceled because of a new passport application in process. Will it create any problems? Should I explain this in my application? Yes, that's what you do. You provide a copy of the old passport that was canceled and the fact that you've requested a new one, and that's how you deal with it. Because otherwise you have no, there's nothing further that you can do. But letters of explanation help to clarify that. And people understand when you're in the process of getting new passports, sometimes it can impact on the current ones. But yes, you can. But at the end of the day, then that new passport would need to be there in order to finalize your application. Okay, Fazia says, may I know what is the difference between regular security screening and comprehensive security screening? What kind of profiles are picked for comprehensive security screening? I wonder why do some applications under CSS take so long to finalize? Fazia, that's a very, very good question. I'll be honest, I've never heard of that terminology before. Regular security screening and comprehensive security screening. I know that some countries require more in-depth security screening than others. So often it's related to the jurisdiction or the country that they have to go and get the security information from. There's more in-depth investigations. Some countries like Australia, the US, the UK, all have, and New Zealand have information sharing agreements with Canada. And so it's a lot easier for them to get data. So it just depends often on the country that you're coming from. Okay. Okay, Will says, what's the lowest CRS score for EE? Well, I think we've already answered that question, Will, in your email question, but the lowest, that if you were to go back, the lowest that it's ever been was 413 points. It was I think a couple of years ago now. And the reason it was that low was because there was no points for Canadian education, no extra bonus points, and there was no points for French or for siblings. And so that's what caused the threshold to drop. But boy, it sure hasn't been that low for years and for a long, long time. Okay, Mylene says, hi, Mark. My husband was an international student. He exceeded 50 hours within 2 months when he was still on a study permit. Will he be in trouble when he will apply for his PR? Well, you're restricted when you are if you're actively studying, then you can't work more than 15 hours a week, or 20, sorry. I keep saying 15, 20 hours a week. You can't exceed that when you're working while you're on a study permit. But if you're working in the regular breaks, you can work as much as you want. You can work full time. There isn't any restriction. So if that work was done during the summers, that's not an issue. You can work as many hours as you want. Okay, Jason says, hi, Mark, hope you're great. My question relates to claiming work experience points from the company that doesn't have any online standing, like website, etc. Okay, as officers conduct online Google searches to verify the company itself, what documentation can I provide to satisfy the officer in this instance where it has no online platform? I've worked reference offer, a termination letter, salary certificate, but my only concern relates to the documentation needed to verify the company in case there is no online standing. Any tips? Thanks once again. Okay, so I'm assuming that the company is still active. the individual that you've listed on your letter has an email address and a phone number. So those are also ways that they can verify that the company exists. Is it registered? Is it a formally registered company with whatever corporate registry may exist in your country? That's also something that I use. So those are typically the things that I do, but obviously the onus is on you to prove. And those are some really, really good suggestions. Obviously, if there's a, there's a physical office where it's located, although I've never really done it, technically you could take a picture of it and then include that with your application. Not something I've ever really thought of before, but to show that it actually exists. What are pictures worth? I don't know, but that's something to show there's an actual physical presence. But letter, email, corporate registry often is really important. Does the company itself file taxes? If they're willing to give you that information, their corporate filings, that also sometimes we can use, but it's one thing to need it and another for the company to give it. Okay, Katamba, welcome back. He says, long time, Mark, kindly talk about the PaperPNP application. Thanks. Katamba, that doesn't fit within our express entry discussion today. Essentially, the one thing I'll toss out is the PaperPNP. Each province have their own processes. Some are online, some are paper. Most are probably online now to get your nomination. If it's not a PNP stream that's associated with express entry, then it's what we call a paper-based application for permanent residence. So you get your nomination from the province, and the Alberta Immigrant Nominee Program's Alberta Opportunity Stream is that way. Once you get the nomination, then you file a paper-based application that you mail to the Central Processing Center out east in Eastern Canada, and then it's a long time. I think we're sitting at about 15 months for that to be processed. So that's the paper-based PNP. All right, Ezra says, thank you for all your efforts, Mark. You're very welcome, Ezra. I have a question regarding the proof of residency of a sibling. Is the proof of home address enough to provide, or it must include also electricity or other bills? In case the landlord pays the bills, how you prove that? Okay, so let's take a look. Let's shift over here. We'll shift over once again to my firm site, and I'm going to go to my favorite site, which is the EE completeness check. See if that pulls up. There it is. So the EE completeness check, we're going to go here and we are going to take a look at control find, and let's see if it's sibling. Nope. Family. I'm just going to Google it till we get to the right spot here. There it is. So proof of relationship to a relative in Canada. And Igor, if you want to post in the a comment with the link to this site in the comment section, that would be great. Or Mauricia, if you're there. So proof of relationship to a relative in Canada. You have to prove this. So you can claim points if your relative is a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, and they are in Canada, and they're a brother or sister to you or your spouse, essentially. Okay, so this is the instructions. So if it's required, if you are actually indicating that you have a sibling, so you're going to provide a copy of both sides of the family member's Canadian citizenship document, birth certificate or PR card, evidence that the family member currently resides in Canada, and you can see the examples here. So a residential lease, a mortgage document, utility bills, etc. The document must show their address in Canada and should be recent dated within 6 months prior to submission. So that's full stop. You have to show and prove that they actually live in Canada. And these are some of the examples that they've given here. So if the person is struggling to get these, well, then you're going to be in trouble, because your obligation is to prove that they're actually there. So use whatever means and creativity that you can. If you don't have these, then I recommend you book a consultation so that we can talk about it, because every person's situations are different. Okay, great question. Okay, Yaya says, hello from Egypt. Awesome. March 18th, I will be flying into Cairo, and I am super, super excited to be able to have a quick little tour in Egypt, then head over to Jordan, where I'm broadcasting from today, and then a nice week in Jerusalem. So I'm really, really excited about that, going with my wife and my in-laws. And I may very well just do an EE Live Q&A if I have enough bandwidth from one of those locations. So we'll see. Very cool. Okay, so Yaya says, my year of work experience nowadays includes more than my duties. In other words, it includes many things that are actually not required in the duties. Will that work to have more than the needed duties shown on CAC? Not needed duties. Okay, so basically this comes down to whether or not you're actually classifying yourself in the right occupation. You have to show that you've performed a substantial number of the main duties of that occupation in order to claim points for it. If your duties are way more and you have other roles, if you have so many of them, there's a danger that maybe those other duties and roles could actually cause an officer to pull you into a different knock code. And if those other duties are low skill duties, it's possible they could say, well, we actually think your position is more closely aligned to this low skill position, and therefore we're not going to give you any credit for those duties. So that's really how it comes down to, you actually have to balance out, because those duties, if they're not associated with that knock code, they have to be associated with another one, and it could affect your knock code that you've selected. Okay. Awesome. We got some good answers there. Okay. ER Akash says, hey, Mark, hope you're doing well. Could you please answer why visa gets rejected when the main candidate and spousal open work permit application is processed simultaneously for international students? Does immigration have a rule that students and dependent cannot file their applications simultaneously? No, the reality is that they are culling out as many study permits as they possibly can. And, when you're filing your application, they're looking at all of the factors that they feel play into their assessment of genuineness, whether or not you would actually return back to your home country after you submitted your application. Now, when it comes to these types of rejections, an officer can't just reject an application because you're applying for an open work permit for a spouse to accompany someone who's applying for a study permit to go to school. But understand, they are cracking down all over the world now. They are having to start refusing study permits because there's over 740,000 international students in Canada. And unless they start to stem that tide, then there just isn't going to be a pathway forward for many of these students who also want to apply for permanent residence. And for people who are looking to apply for permanent residence who have profiles in the pool, they will often use that as a reason to refuse, not in and of itself, but as a factor to refuse the original study permit. So there's tons of study permits. I've got a good friend in Calgary that I work with all the time by the name of Reka McNutt, and I'll be releasing a podcast episode that I just did with her in probably today. I'm going to try to get it out, where we're talking about refusals and other things. And one of the things that she specializes in is judicially reviewing these types of study permit refusals when they're not valid in law, when the decision is there's an error in the reasons that they used for refusing it. They can't just refuse it for no reason at all because they feel like it. There has to be justifiable grounds. Okay. So it's really, really, so people try to be cute and they try to submit a study permit and say their spouse is staying back. And obviously with your spouse staying back, there's an indicator that, all right, I'm going to truly just study for a temporary period, and then I'm going to be returning back to my home country because that's where my family is. That's why people do it. But it's far more complicated than just that. There is no rule that says just because you file together that it's going to get rejected. No. And there's no rule that says because you split up that they're actually going to believe you. So, all right. All right, so we'll move through here. AFO says, is it easy to secure postdoc in economic jobs in Canada for PhD holders earning from outside Canada? AFO, that's an exact example of a specific question that really would need a paid consultation. That's probably too narrow to be able to answer here. But the reality is I couldn't answer it. All I do is immigration, not recruitment. Okay, Will says, do you still offer 60% off discount for consultations? Will, I think I told you that. No, I do not. But I do have, for those who are watching live right now, I reward people who watch this if they type in EE DIY 50, and Will is talking about this here, and I'll share my screen with you again. And Igor can also post a link to this, or Mauricia. on my Canadian Immigration Institute page, and I really do need to make this easier to find. If you click on Express Entry Purchase the Guide, and then you go to the lifetime and you purchase it, and then you type in the code EEDIY50 right here and click apply, you then get 50% off. So it's half of what the regular price is. But I only advertise that within the groups and the videos, and usually I embed it in the middle because I want to reward people who are actually watching it. So that's how you do it. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I think everybody knows that this course that I have here is really the reason why I can do these live Q&As. And when I'm going through the process of, if I go in here, Canadian Immigration Institute, and I log in, I think I can log in with my own links here. This is what you get. And I walk, I literally, it's a course. It's a DIY immigration course. It's not a little guide. And I should probably change this because people, you know, a guide implies that it's some little easy, goofy little thing. When in the reality, it is a super comprehensive step-by-step course on how to, I take your hand and walk you through the whole process. From learning the basics of Express Entry in Module 1, which talks about what Express Entry is and how the comprehensive ranking system works. And I also have a module on preparing for Express Entry. And those first two modules alone, without even applying, are worth every penny of what I charge for the course. And the reason is because this Module 2 can help you to know whether or not you qualify. And for the $248.50 that I'm offering to you guys right now, you're going to save yourself money because by watching these videos, it will tell you whether or not you should even bother trying to waste money on a language test, whether or not you should spend money on an educational credential assessment. Right then and there, that's over $500 Canadian in many cases for the cost of having this. So it talks about eligibility. It talks about how to register. It talks about the 5 things to do before you even submit your profile. So those of you who've actually purchased the course, just give a shout out to the people. And you'll see that even Module 1 and 2 are awesome. So if we go back now and you can see then it's how to complete your profile. That's this one right here, Module 3. And you can see all the lessons. These are all designed to match up with every single section within Express Entry so that if I need to make a change because the government makes a change, each of these little video courses will be adjusted. All right. And so that's the profile. Then there's a section for completing the EAPR forms. And after you get your ITA, this is a detailed description for everyone. And it's broken down into principal to accompanying spouses. So if you're only an individual, you don't need to sit through watching a video on spouses or dependents because it doesn't apply to you. So that's how I've broken it down. And then the last, well, there's 2 more, but Module 5 is the one I'm most proud of because that one has detailed explanations on the document checklist, which people struggle with all the time. And I have a ton of sample downloads all along the side here. Everything from job offer letters, what they need to look like, reference letters, work permits, so you can know if someone's trying to scam you, what a work permit looks like, police clearances, marriage, birth certificates, and then ECAs from all the different organizations, sample gift deeds. All of the documents that people submit are all samples, are all included in here. And that's all a part of this course. And then the final piece, which I guess I'm as proud of as anything else, is the member resource section. You guys can go and spend hours and hours searching for all of the information embedded within these long videos I do. But the reality is when you look at all of these, what I've got here in the member resource section, I've done the hard work for you. There's general information section, videos on work experience, including self-employed work experience, which is super, super complicated. And I go into great detail in this video talking about all the different ways that you can actually prove self-employed work experience. I should probably create a course all on its own for that. Language, how to increase your language scores. There's Express Entry eligibility, job offers. Even I've got videos and podcasts on, why it's so hard to get a job offer from a Canadian employer. How to get what is the job offer? All those kinds of things. Section on proof of funds, police clearances, dependent, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling so fast here, dependent family, non-accompanying spouses. If you're listing them, this is how to complete the forms when you're listing your spouse as non-accompanying. And then education, medicals, provincial nominations, other names when you have to change your name, relatives in Canada, which was one of the questions today, dependent children, spousal relationships, provincial nominations again, express entry refusals. What are the main reasons? So all of this here is broken down into a way that just it allows you to pick and choose the things that are the most important for you. I recently had someone ask for their money back because they said, oh, it's all general information. Well, they never even went to the member section. The reality is the so-called general information, which I know it's not general information. Sure, you could spend hours searching all over the internet and eventually find answers to many of the questions that I have here, but it's going to take you so many hours and you'll never know whether you can trust who's giving you the information. So I wanted to share that with you. And like I said, if you type in, and I guess I'll just go back here again one last time. If you go to the actual course, and I'll type this in here, and I typed in the wrong one. If you go to the CanadianImmigrationInstitute.com, excuse me, individual guides, and then down here, learn more, you can then purchase the guide. And if you type in the code that I gave you, as soon as this opens up this page right there, if you go to lifetime access, and it's just for lifetime access, purchase the guide and then type in the code EEDIY50 and click apply, you'll get 50% off. All right. Okay. So there is that. Let's jump back here. And I know I've got a ton of other questions. And so I'll answer them in just a second. Okay. So I answered ER Akash's. So if you've got a study permit that was rejected, then you need to reach out and consider judicial review. And that's something only a lawyer can help you with. So if you need assistance with that, I'm happy to work with you. Okay. Akoti says, are you saying if my passport will expire in 6 months' time, I have to update my profile pre-ITA with a new passport number? No, I'm not saying that at all. No, you can continue forward with your profile, but your passport, you have to make sure that your passport in your profile doesn't expire, because that can get your profile canceled. Okay, if you're post-ITA and you've submitted your PR and waiting for a response on the passport that will be expiring in 6 months, will the PR be put on my passport as is and I travel with a new passport? No, what'll happen is your passport, the one that's valid for 6 months, you'll have to get an extension if you're still waiting for that passport to be issued. But once the passport request comes in, then you provide your new passport and everything's put on your new passport, even though you submitted with your old passport. Okay, Holman says, and I'm going to have to wrap up here. Last question, we'll end with Holman here. He says, hi, Mark. I was wondering if you offer services for extension of tourist visa and international student application. Thank you in advance. Yes, I do, Holman. All you need to do is just set up a consult and we can go through the whole process. Yes, indeed, we do. We assist with all kinds of Canadian immigration applications, not just express entry. All right, so we're going to end off right there. I want to thank everybody who has sent in so many questions and been just so actively engaged in supporting really this whole group, the Canadian Immigration Institute. I want to give a shout out to all my moderators on the Express Entry Law private Facebook group who have done such a good job at keeping that place safe. You know, we have almost 125,000 people in that group. And that's pretty amazing when you think of the number of people that are coming in and the number of people that are graduating essentially as I call them alumni of the Canadian Immigration Institute, who go through, who use the resources, the free resources that are available for all to navigate their way through and eventually become permanent residents, just like Mauricia and Igor, who are now a part of our Holthe Immigration Law team. So thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Remember that there's lots of other offerings. The Canadian Immigration Podcast on iTunes, you can check that out. We have the YouTube channel. Shout out to all of you who are watching on YouTube. You guys are awesome. And these videos are always stored within Facebook on the Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page and shared with the Express Entry Law private Facebook group. So thanks so much, guys. I want to thank you, as always, for all of your support. And stay tuned for the new site, which I gave you a little sneak peek today. It's going to be going live, and it will talk about basically immigration representation done better, which is, I think, what we've got figured out. All right, guys, take care. Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer, ex-immigration officer, and former high school teacher, signing off, wishing you guys all the best as you navigate this crazy world that we call express entry. Take care.